My wife's diary fell open on our bed. I knew I shouldn't look, but then I saw his name. Today, he made me laugh so hard I forgot everything. My hands shook as I kept reading. Page after page, she wrote about him, her soulmate. But it wasn't me. That night, I sat by the fireplace, holding the diary. When she walked in, I simply asked, "How long have you been in love with him?" She gasped, eyes darting to the book. "You read it?" I nodded. And he did too. Just then, my phone rang. She looked terrified as I put it on speaker. And his voice came through. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This is something I never thought I'd be writing. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for 12 years. We've lived in a quiet suburb near Portland, Oregon, raised 2 kids, and built what I thought was a decent life. I'm not here to paint myself as perfect. I know marriage has ups and downs. But I never thought I'd be the guy writing about this. It started with something small. Innocent, really. It was a Saturday afternoon. Sarah had gone out to run errands. I stayed behind to do some laundry and tidy up. Our bedroom was a mess, and I figured I'd finally get around to fixing the bed and vacuuming the floor. That's when I saw it. Her diary. It was lying between the mattress and the nightstand. Like it had slipped off during the night and just stayed there. Leather cover. Small clasp. A little worn on the edges. I didn't even know she kept a diary. Or maybe I forgot. I picked it up with the full intention of putting it away. But when I opened the drawer to slide it back, the clasp came undone, and the book fell open. Right there on the bed. I swear I tried to look away. But my eyes landed on a sentence written in her handwriting. Her neat, small, careful writing. Today, he made me laugh so hard I forgot everything. My stomach dropped. I didn't even know who he was. But something in the tone, just that one sentence, sounded too warm, too personal. I stood there for probably a full minute, heart pounding, staring at those words. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I started reading. I sat down on the edge of the bed and flipped back to the beginning of that entry. Then the one before. Then the next one. Page after page. It wasn't just one mention. It wasn't a passing crush. She was in love with someone else. She called him her soulmate. She talked about how he made her feel young again, how he listened, how he saw her, how she didn't feel invisible around him. She described their conversations in detail. Inside jokes. His cologne. The way he looked at her when she talked. She even wrote about sneaking away to see him. That hit me like a punch to the chest. I had to stop and catch my breath. My hands were shaking. My face felt hot. I flipped to the most recent entry. He says he's falling for me too. I don't know what this means. I still love James, but it's different. Lately, I feel like I'm just surviving around him. With him, I'm living. I'm James. I read that sentence probably 20 times. I don't remember much of what I did after that. I just remember sitting there for hours. Diary on my lap. Eyes dry, but heart going through the ringer. The kids were at a sleepover that night. We had the house to ourselves. Around 9:30 p.m., she came home. I was still sitting by the fireplace in the living room, the diary in my hands. She walked in, looking relaxed. Shopping bags in hand. Said, "Hey babe," like everything was normal. I didn't say anything at first. Just looked at her. Then I said it. "How long have you been in love with him?" She froze. Like someone had shut off the power to her body. Eyes wide. Bags dropped to the floor. Silence. Then she whispered, "You read it?" I nodded. "And he did too," I said. Now she looked confused. "What?" My phone rang at that exact moment. I didn't even plan it. I hadn't called him yet. But somehow, it was like the universe had perfect timing. It was Mark. I put it on speaker. Mark's voice came through, clear as day. "Hey man, I got your message. Everything all right?" Sarah's face turned white. Her knees gave out, and she sat down hard on the couch. She didn't say a word. "You want to tell her? Or should I?" I asked him. Long pause. Then Mark said, "Sarah, I'm sorry. He knows." She let out this sound, like a choked sob mixed with a gasp. Her hands flew up to her mouth. She couldn't even speak. "I trusted both of you," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but I could hear the rage underneath it. Mark kept talking. "I never wanted to hurt you, James. It just happened. Tell me everything," I said. "How long has it been going on?" Silence. Then Mark said, 6 months. I turned to Sarah. "You confirm that?" She nodded. "Barely." I felt sick. "Was it just emotional?" I asked. "Or did it go further?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "It wasn't just emotional." He stayed quiet. I turned back to Sarah. "When? Where?" She was sobbing now. The first time, it was after that office party you didn't go to. You said you had a migraine. He drove me home. One thing led to another. I clenched my fists, tried to keep from screaming. And after that? She nodded. A few more times. Hotels. His place once. I didn't mean for it to go on this long. I tried to stop. You tried to stop, I repeated. But didn't. No, she said. I didn't. She finally looked at me. James, I still love you. I do. But I got lost. I was feeling so alone. And he was there. It doesn't excuse anything, I know. I didn't say anything. I ended the call. Didn't even say goodbye to Mark. Just hung up. Then I sat down on the floor, staring at the flames in the fireplace. She was still on the couch, crying, but not saying anything else. And I just kept thinking, how do you come back from something like this? We were supposed to be a team. We were supposed to grow old together. I look at her, and I see the woman who held my hand when my dad died, who stayed up all night when our son had that asthma attack, who danced with me barefoot in the kitchen after our anniversary dinner. And now I see someone who gave herself to someone else. Someone I trusted more than anyone else. I still haven't made a decision. I don't know if I can forgive her. I don't know if I want to forgive her. I haven't told our kids yet. I don't even know how. She wrote in that diary that she felt invisible. That hurts. Because I never wanted her to feel that way. But instead of talking to me, she ran to someone else. To him. This isn't over. There's so much more to say. So much more to unpack. But for now, I needed to get this out. It's been a few days since everything blew up. I thought I'd cool down. I thought maybe I'd start thinking clearly. But the opposite happened. The more I sat with it, the worse it got. Well, ex-wife. Technically, her name's Danielle. We don't talk much. We were more high and by at parties. But I always liked her. Down to earth, funny, didn't care much for small talk. She looked rough, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't even say hello. Just looked me in the eyes and said, "You found out too, huh?" I nodded slowly. "How long have you known?" She gave a bitter laugh. "A year. A year." That hit me like a brick. "A year." I repeated. She nodded. "I found out by accident." Mark left his email open on the iPad. There were messages. And pictures. Pictures. My stomach turned. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. She shrugged. I confronted him. We fought. Screamed, cried. He promised to end it. Said it was just a moment of weakness. I stayed for our daughter. Figured maybe it really was a mistake. She paused. Looked me in the eye again. But then I caught him again. And again. Different times. Different lies. Same woman. She didn't even have to say the name. "You're not the first husband she's cheated on," she added quietly. I blinked. "What?" Danielle nodded. She had an affair before. Some guy from work. Back in 2016. I felt like my legs were giving out. My ears were ringing. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded again. "Mark told me. Said she was in a dark place back then. That he was helping her through it. That's how they started getting close. Trauma bonding, he called it." I didn't even know what to say. My chest felt tight. Like someone had taken every piece of my life and stomped on it. Danielle touched my arm. "You're not crazy," she said. "You didn't miss the signs. She's just good at hiding it. So is he." Then she left. Just like that. When I got home, Sarah was in the kitchen. She looked up when she heard the door, then quickly looked down again. Like she didn't want to see my face. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her. She finally said, "You okay?" I didn't answer. Just kept staring. "James, why didn't you tell me about 2016? I asked. Calm. Cold. She froze. The blood drained from her face. "What?" she said. "You heard me." She turned away. "That was a long time ago. It didn't mean anything." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Didn't mean anything?" I repeated. "You cheated twice. With 2 different men. And one of them was my best friend." She covered her face with her hands. "I didn't want to lose you." "You already did," I snapped. She started sobbing again. The kind of crying that echoes through the walls. But I didn't feel bad this time. I didn't comfort her. I just stood there. She finally looked at me and said, "I'm going to check myself into therapy. For real this time. I don't know why I do this. I hate myself for it." I said nothing. Because I didn't know what to believe anymore. That night, around midnight, I got a message. It was from an unknown number. She told me she was going to leave you for me. She said she'd been unhappy for years. Thought you should know. No name. but I had a feeling who it was. I replied, "Who is this?" The response came back, "Ask her about Patrick." From the bookstore, 2021. And just like that, my whole world started shaking again. Another man? Another year? Another lie? I haven't confronted her about it yet. I don't know if I can take hearing it confirmed. But I will find out. Because now, I need to know everything. I confronted her. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. Barely slept. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for her to come downstairs. She looked surprised to see me there so early. Tried to smile. I didn't smile back. "I got a text last night," I said. "From someone named Patrick." Her whole body stiffened. I knew. She sat down without a word. Her hands shook a little as she reached for her mug. She didn't look up. "I thought it was just Mark," I said. "Then Danielle told me about 2016. Now this." She finally whispered. "It wasn't what it sounds like." My voice cracked. "Please don't insult me. Just tell me the truth." She looked up at me, eyes full of tears. "It was just emotional. With Patrick. We worked together for a while. He went through a divorce. I was struggling with depression. We leaned on each other. That's all. That's all." I repeated. "Did you tell him you were going to leave me for him too?" Her face crumbled. "I never said that." "He's lying." I leaned back in my chair. "You really expect me to believe you're the honest one in this situation?" She stood up, crying now, and walked out of the room. I sat there in silence for a long time. Just breathing. Just trying to not break down again. But it was a letter to Mark. And it started with this. "If things were different, if we weren't both tied down, I'd run away with you tomorrow. James is a good man, but he doesn't make me feel alive. You do." I dropped the letter. Sat on the cold garage floor. I couldn't move. Couldn't cry. I just felt numb. There was more. Sometimes I imagine us starting over. In a different city. Somewhere warm. Just you and me. No guilt. No pretending. There it was. In her own words. She didn't just fall into this. She planned it. That night, I didn't say anything to her. I just watched her. The way she moved around the kitchen. The way she avoided eye contact. She was nervous. Like she knew something else was about to break. Around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a DM on Instagram. From a username I didn't recognize at Truth Seriously. There was only one message. "Ask Sarah about the cabin trip. Summer 2022. It wasn't just you and the kids there." I froze. That trip. I remember it clearly. We went up to a lake house near Mount Hood. A family trip. Just us and the kids. Or so I thought. I replied, "Who is this?" No answer. But they sent a photo of Sarah and Mark kissing outside the cabin. Same green hoodie I remember her wearing that week. Same hairstyle. Same earrings. I remember that day. I went to the store to get marshmallows. Was gone maybe 45 minutes. It must have happened then. The next morning, I showed her the photo. She didn't even try to deny it. Just crumpled to the floor. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I never wanted to hurt you." I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Were you ever planning to tell me?" She hesitated, then said, "No, just like that. No." And that somehow hurt more than everything else. So now I know. She's cheated at least 3 times. Once in 2016, someone from work. With Patrick in 2021, emotional, allegedly. With Mark, my best friend, from late 2022 through early this year. And that cabin kiss in 2022? That wasn't a mistake. That was planned. I've started sleeping at a friend's place. I don't know what to do next. Divorce feels inevitable, but every time I look at our kids, I hesitate. Not because of her, because of them. They're young. They still think the world is okay. And part of me is scared they'll blame me. Or worse, her. But this story isn't over. Not yet. Because there's still one more thing. Mark texted me again tonight. He said, "I think she's lying to both of us." And I have no idea what he means by that. If you've read this far, thank you. I didn't expect this story to keep going. I didn't expect my life to keep unraveling the way it did. But here we are. A few nights ago, the final piece fell into place, and it blew the lid off everything. Let me walk you through how it happened. Mark's message kept haunting me. "I think she's lying to both of us." At first, I thought he was trying to shift the blame. Maybe manipulate the situation. But something about the way he said it stuck in my head. So I told him to meet me. In person. Neutral ground. A little diner off Highway 26, just past Beaverton. He looked like hell when he showed up. Pale, sunken eyes, 5-day stubble. He sat across from me, hands shaking. Didn't order anything. I'm not proud of anything I did, he said. But I need you to hear this. Then he pulled out his phone. He showed me texts. A whole thread. Not just between him and Sarah. Between Sarah and another man. And this guy wasn't me. And he wasn't Mark. Or Patrick. His name was Brian. A fourth man. A gym instructor from her Pilates class. The messages were flirty. Detailed. Explicit. Plans to meet. Gratitude for yesterday. Promises of next time. They were still talking. Still seeing each other. My hands went cold. My mouth went dry. She told me it ended months ago, Mark said. That she was trying to save her marriage. I backed off. But I had this feeling. So I checked in with someone we both know who works at the gym. He paused. Looked me in the eyes. They were seen together. Last week. Holding hands in the parking lot. I went home that night shaking. I didn't say anything to Sarah right away. I just watched her from across the room while she was folding laundry, acting like nothing had happened. She asked if I wanted dinner. I said, yeah, let's do dinner. Just the two of us. We made a plan. She seemed almost hopeful. That night, we went to our usual restaurant. Small place. Family-owned. Somewhere we'd gone every anniversary. I waited until after the food arrived. Then I pulled out my phone. And I put it on the table. Photos. Texts. Screenshots. Every single receipt of Brian. She looked down. Then looked up at me, slowly. Face completely blank. I was going to stop, she whispered. No, I said. You were just going to hide it better. A couple at the next table looked over. I didn't care. I pushed further. Mark. Patrick. That guy from 2016. Now Brian. Were there more? She didn't answer. I asked again. Louder this time. Were there more? People were definitely staring now. She closed her eyes. Tears started coming, but I didn't buy it anymore. I don't know, she finally said. I laughed. Out loud. Couldn't stop myself. You don't know? She nodded, eyes red. There were moments. I never thought it would turn into all this. I thought I could keep the parts of my life separate. Separate. I repeated. You cheated with 4 different men, Sarah. You lied to me, to Mark, to everyone. There are no parts. You blew up the whole damn thing. Then I said something I hadn't even planned. You're sick. And I meant it. Not in a cruel way, but in a deeply sad way. She didn't deny it. After that night, everything moved fast. I filed for separation the next day. She begged me not to tell the kids yet. I agreed, for now. But I told her I'd be moving out. That weekend. She didn't fight me on it. I stayed with my brother for a while. He's blunt and doesn't sugarcoat things. You're lucky you found out now, he said. Not 10 years from now. Not after retirement. You've still got time. Danielle, Mark's ex, called me too. We talked for over an hour. It was weird, but comforting. She said something that stuck with me. Some people can't love without needing to be loved by everyone. It's not about you. It's about her being a bottomless hole of need. I don't know if that's true, but it made me feel a little less broken. Sarah and I had one final sit down. No yelling. No anger. Just the quiet realization of 2 people standing in the ruins of something they once built together. I loved you, she said. I really did. I know, I replied. But you loved the attention more. She cried again. But I didn't. I just said, I hope you find help. She said, I don't deserve it. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. That's not my problem anymore. I'm not okay. Not yet. I still get waves of anger. I still replay the moments where I could have seen the signs. I still flinch when my phone buzzes. But I'm breathing easier. Sleeping better. I see the kids every other weekend. We're working through it. I haven't told them everything. Just that Mom and Dad need time apart. Someday, they'll know the truth. But not now. Mark? I haven't spoken to him again. I told him I appreciate the honesty at the end, but there's no coming back from what he did. That bridge is gone. Sarah started therapy, or so she says. I hope it's true. For her sake. And for our kids. Cheating doesn't just break trust. It burns the blueprint of trust. You look at every memory and wonder if it was real. You question your own sanity, your own worth. But here's what I know now. It wasn't me. It wasn't because I wasn't enough. It was because she wasn't whole. And until she figures out why, she'll keep breaking every good thing in front of her. As for me, I don't know what comes next. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm just free.